Another thing we didn't talk about was, and you kind of mentioned, you alluded to it with this evolutionary mismatch you mentioned. The world that we live in today is much different. We've got all these artificial lights.
It's a big thing.
Our light exposure is totally changed.
Yep.
Some of us are in offices all day and we're not exposed to bright light during the day, and then we go home at night with all these lights on. And,
Yep.
So it's kind of, there's a mismatch there. And I do know that there's, I think I sent you a couple of studies, and one was showing that bright light exposure was able to even help treat people with non-seasonal depressive
Oh, absolutely.
disorder.
Yeah, there's some nice data on that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And what I was kind of trying to make was the link between cortisol and the bright light exposure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because of course, that's what entrains to a large degree your cortisol rhythms, and probably cytokine rhythms too. They also
right.
have
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's another example of this idea that humans evolved to if not need to function optimally with certain types of inputs. And if you say, well, why do they function optimally with those inputs? It's because across a couple million years, that's what they got. And so they evolved to function optimally with those inputs. The reason we like bright light in the morning and dark at night is because until fairly recently, since the creation of the world, mornings were bright and nights were black, and so we marry ourselves to those conditions because evolution is always trying to optimize the organism to the environment. That's the challenge, right? So we optimize to that mixture of light, but then we also have a sort of an evolutionary mandate to compete with each other, to be productive, and so all of a sudden you invent things like lights, and now you can stay up all damn night and get that and work, because that's also a human mandate, right? I mean, we're these ultimately social creatures, and so we get ourselves in these double binds where these mandates, one mandate is if you see something sweet, eat it immediately as much as you can because it's rare and it's huge calories, and that's great. So if that's true, then maybe we should just invent nothing but sweet stuff, and that's so awesome, but now we're killing ourselves with sweet stuff, so now we need to renounce. So it's always likely you get these sort of things where one mandate in the human world interacts problematically with another, and light is a classic example of that.
Yeah, it is, and the fact that the circadian rhythm is regulated largely by light, also by food intake as well. But the cortisol take on it. Cortisol is a hormone that changes like 25% of the human genome. Many of those genes involved in inflammation, like
Absolutely,
you said.
It's a huge inflammatory.
Yeah, exactly. So totally, makes sense that these two they're interconnected. And having just bright light exposure, there was one study where exposing humans to like 10,000 lux of bright light for 7 hours a day lowered their cortisol response during the rising phase, when it's usually like the highest. And so, there obviously was a anti-inflammatory sort of, or depressive, I guess, immunosuppressive effect as well, because you're not having as high of a cortisol response. Yeah. But another thing that just so many humans don't realize that could also be playing a role in their depression, their way that they're responding to emotional stimuli and all these things. So I personally, my husband and I have tried to optimize to the best of our ability our light exposure. So we have these lights in our house called Philip Hue, which basically you can change color. So blue light is what
That's what you want early in the day,
exactly,
and not what you want at night.
So at night we have our setup. You can time them so that it shuts off the blue light and it turns on red light.
Yeah.
So we have all these red lights around our house that come on.
Cool.
Yeah, and it really, really makes a difference. I mean, you get tired, because you start making melatonin, and so the sleep onset is much earlier than if you were to have regular old blue lights.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we have apps on our phone and our computer called Flux, which then also tones down the blue light, so your computer screen isn't emitting the blue light. Yeah. So, but the lights around the house are really cool. They're kind of expensive, but really worth it.
And you have them all around the house.
We have them in every room. Yeah.
What are they called?
In the kitchen. Philips Hue.
H-U-E.
I'll send you.
Okay.
Yeah, H-U-E. I will.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool. They do all sorts of colors. They do purple, blue, orange. But we go from the bright blue to red. Yeah. So that's what we're using them for. And then the bright light exposure early in the morning. Like having, going outside for 30 minutes or making sure you have light in
even
in
on
your
the
house.
cloudiest day.
Yeah.
You get like 5,000 lux on a cloudy day. You cannot. Yeah. It's just
So even on a cloudy day, you get like.
Oh yeah, you get a lot compared to just sitting in your average room. Absolutely.
And do you know how long? Like, can people just do 30 minutes or an hour? Like, because it's hard.
It is.
Going to work.
I tell people 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
And I mean, yeah, and there's no doubt that the light boxes really help a lot of people, not just seasonal people. So there's another example. There's an interesting example of a simple technology recapitulating natural conditions that optimize human emotional well-being. Now, the other thing that I'm convinced is really important is dark. There's a whole biology of dark. Right?
Like during the time when it's supposed to be dark, like evening.
Yeah. Because even a little bit of light absolutely screws up melatonin release. Blue light mostly. Right. I mean, that's where it's really smart to do this. But I mean, we cannot now. Actually, the first academic paper I ever wrote was called "The Moon and Madness Reconsidered," about why the moon was associated with madness in ancient times. Making an argument that the moon was essentially a light source that activated manic episodes because sleep deprivation is such a powerful driver of mania. But as part of that work, I did this massive research on the history of lighting, and it is so interesting. Like for instance, in ancient Rome, Rome was so dark at night that you could go out into the biggest street in Rome, and you wouldn't see your hand in front of your face unless the moon was out. I mean, it was just pitch black. People take everything in because it's just total blackness. London was pitch black. There was a massive prostitution business that was run on the London Bridge. We know this because Boswell, Boswell, the guy that wrote the biography on Samuel Johnson, recorded all of his dalliances, and he'd be out there doing it on the bridge. I actually went back and matched the dates of his prostitute things with the phases of the moon in the 1760s, and he was always doing it at dark of the moon. It's fascinating, right? So, I mean, London, the greatest city on earth in that time, was so dark that you could do that. This is in the 1760s. So, we just, and there's a guy named Tom Ware. He's retired now, but he was sort of the king of the circadian stuff for many years at NIMH, the National Institute of Mental Health. And he actually did this great study where in particular, he took this one just impossibly bipolar person, stuck him in the dark for 12 hours every day for a year or so, and just profoundly fixed the guy, right? So darkness. Now, darkness is another example, actually, of an ancient spiritual practice. So one of the most bizarre of sort of tantric, heavy-duty Tibetan Buddhist practices is something called the dark retreat, where people go into utter, complete darkness for 49 days straight.
49 days, wow.
That's the length of time that they believe. That's the maximal length of time between reincarnations.
Now, are they also in silence as well? Silence and dark?
Silence, except for a couple times a day when people slip. They've got some mechanism now for slipping food under the door.
But they're not
people
talking to anyone.
No,
so.
No. And they start hallucinating like mad. And the point
Wow.
the point of that is utter sensory deprivation, right? The point of that then is to, from their perspective, the point of that is to recognize that the whole world can arise from the creation of their mind, and so they realize that this world is also sort of insubstantial. I mean, at least that's my understanding of the spiritual. But isn't it amazing that something like dark can also be appropriated for spiritual practices? Now, whether it would have any therapeutic potential is kind of unknown, but it's on my bucket list, not to do 49 days, but to go, and I've got an invitation to go check it out. Yeah.
Wow.
Very famous television journalist is going to come.
That's hardcore.